You're not real family. Don't come to my graduation. Those words hit me like a freight train, and I still can't believe they came from Mark, my stepson. I stood there, frozen, trying to comprehend what just happened. How did we get here? Just a few months ago, everything seemed fine. I thought we had a relationship. After all, I raised him for most of his life. I cooked his meals, wiped his tears, and made him feel like part of the family. But now those words, those cold, cutting words, pierced through everything I thought was true about our bond. Graduation was supposed to be a moment of celebration, something that would bring the family together. I had been looking forward to it. I had already picked out the perfect dress, one that I knew would make me look elegant. I had planned to take pictures and laugh with my husband, reminiscing about the times Mark was a little boy, always running around the house with that big smile. But no, none of that was going to happen now. As I stood in the doorway, looking at Mark's face, his eyes full of indifference, I realized something that shook me to my core. All these years, I had been nothing more than a second-class citizen in his life. His real family, the one he valued, was no longer me. It was his mother and father, people I had never met. I didn't know what to do. Should I fight back, yell at him? Should I demand an explanation? But no, I stayed silent. There was no point. The words were already out there. The damage was done. I had spent my life trying to make sure everyone around me was happy. I had bent over backward for my family, but somehow, in the end, it wasn't enough. Mark's voice echoed in my head, "You're not real family." Those words weren't just a rejection of me, they were a rejection of everything I had done for him. In that moment, I realized that no matter what I did, I could never be the person he wanted me to be. And it hurt. It hurt so much more than I had expected. He was my stepson, for heaven's sake. I had loved him like he was my own, and this was the thanks I got. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this go easily. I was stronger than this. Stronger than he thought. And I would show him that. It wasn't going to be today. Not in front of everyone. But soon, I would make him regret those words. I would make sure he understood just how much I had given for this family. How much I had sacrificed. And how much he would lose by pushing me out of his life. But for now, all I could do was walk away, my heart breaking into pieces with every step. I could feel the sting of rejection and the weight of years of efforts slipping away. But I wasn't going to let it destroy me. Not yet. I spent the rest of the day trying to process what had happened. I didn't cry, though I felt the tears building up inside. I simply went through the motions, checking my phone, making sure the house was in order, avoiding Mark's absence in every corner of the room. The silence was deafening. I kept replaying his words over and over in my mind, wondering what I had done to deserve this. But nothing made sense. I had loved him. I had given him everything I could, and this was how he repaid me? I couldn't let myself fall apart though. Not now. Not after all these years of being the strong one in the family. I had to maintain my composure. The day Mark made his announcement, I had been planning to take a walk. I often did that when I needed to clear my mind. But that day, my feet felt heavier than ever. The house felt even emptier without him. I walked through the living room, my eyes scanning the place where we used to spend so much time together. I could still picture the way his eyes would light up when he talked about his future, about graduating, about what came next. I thought he trusted me. I thought we were family. But now, all of that felt like a distant memory. I sat down on the couch and took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. My husband, Tom, had been sitting quietly in his chair when Mark spoke those words. I could feel his eyes on me, but he said nothing. He didn't defend me. Didn't say a word to Mark. It was as if he, too, was just watching a scene unfold that he had no power over. Was he just as blindsided as I was? Or had he known something I didn't? I had always thought that Tom and I shared everything, but now I wasn't so sure. I tried to talk to him later, but he avoided my gaze, his answer a mere shrug. He's growing up. Tom said, his voice flat. It's a phase. A phase. As if being dismissed by your own child, a child you raised, was just some passing moment. I shook my head, feeling the weight of it all. I wasn't a fool. This wasn't just a phase. Something had changed. I wasn't part of their plans anymore. I wasn't even part of my own family. The thought of not going to Mark's graduation didn't sit right with me. I had to be there, didn't I? But I couldn't bring myself to face him after what he had said. The thought of standing in that crowd, watching him walk across the stage, knowing that I wasn't welcome, made my stomach turn. So I stayed home, and I let him have his moment, surrounded by people who truly mattered to him. I thought about it long and hard. Should I confront him? Ask him what happened? Demand an explanation for the cruel words he said to me? Or should I walk away, just like he had told me to? I wasn't sure yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this go quietly. I wasn't going to be the victim of this family drama. I would find a way to make him realize what he had done. I would find a way to show him just how much I had given, how much I had sacrificed, and how his rejection of me wasn't something I was going to accept. The days after Mark's graduation were harder than I could have ever imagined. I kept replaying that day in my head, wondering if things could have been different, if I had done something differently. I tried to keep myself busy, focusing on the little things. But nothing felt right anymore. The house seemed empty, and the silence was louder than ever. It was as though everything had changed in an instant, and I was left to pick up the pieces of a life I no longer recognized. I tried to call Tom to talk about it, but his response was always the same. It's just a phase, Diane. He'll come around. I wasn't so sure anymore. It didn't feel like a phase. It felt like a permanent shift, a shift that left me out of the picture completely. One night, as I sat in the living room, I decided I had enough. I couldn't sit around and wait for Mark to come to his senses. If I didn't take control, I'd always be at the mercy of his decisions, of his moods. I had to take a stand, not just for myself, but for the family I thought I had. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had been avoiding for weeks. It was my old friend Kathy, someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. She had always been a shoulder to lean on, someone who had seen me through the hardest times in my life. When she answered, I could hear the concern in her voice. Diane, it's been a while. How are you doing? I sighed. Not great, Kathy. It's Mark. I don't know what to do anymore. What happened? She asked. He told me not to come to his graduation. Said I'm not real family. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. That's awful, Diane. I'm so sorry. But you can't let him treat you like that. You've given him so much. Don't let him take that away from you. I felt a lump in my throat. Kathy was right. I had given everything for this family, and I wasn't going to let one cruel moment take that all away. I just don't understand how it all went so wrong. I've been there for him. I've loved him like he was my own. And now this? I felt the tears threatening to fall again, but I held them back. I don't know what to do. I feel so lost, so alone. Kathy's voice softened. You're not alone, Diane. You've got people who care about you, people who know your worth. Don't forget that. And as for Mark, well, maybe it's time to show him that you're stronger than he thinks. He might be your stepson, but you have every right to stand up for yourself. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Kathy's words hit me hard. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop being the one who always gave, always forgave. I needed to remind Mark, and maybe even Tom, that I wasn't going to let anyone treat me like this anymore. The next morning, I woke up with a new sense of determination. I wasn't going to sit idly by anymore. I wasn't going to let this family push me aside. I needed to find my voice again. And I was going to start by having a serious conversation with Tom. He needed to know how deeply his son's words had cut me. He needed to understand that this wasn't just a phase, and I wasn't going to let it slide. The truth was, I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let myself be forgotten. I sat down with Tom that evening, my heart pounding. I had been thinking about this moment all day. The conversation I had been avoiding for so long. The conversation that had to happen now. I needed him to understand, to see how deep this wound was. As he walked into the room, he seemed unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "Hey, Diane," he greeted, his voice casual. "How was your day?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "We need to talk," I said, my voice firm but calm. He looked at me, his brows furrowing. "What about?" I could see he was trying to gauge the mood, but I wasn't going to make this easy for him. "It's about Mark," I started, keeping my voice steady. "And what he said to me the other day. About me not being real family and telling me not to come to his graduation." Tom's face shifted slightly, but he didn't speak. I pressed on. "I need you to understand how hurtful that was. How much it cut me. I've been there for him all these years, and now he just dismisses me like I don't matter?" Tom looked down, avoiding my gaze. "I know, Diane, but he's going through a lot. You know how he is." "How he is?" I repeated, the frustration beginning to rise in me. "I don't care about how he is. What matters is how he treated me. I gave him everything I had, and for what? So he could tell me I'm not real family?" Tom shifted in his chair, clearly uncomfortable. "You know he didn't mean it, Diane. It's just a phase. He'll come around." "A phase?" I asked, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "You keep saying that. But this isn't just a phase, Tom. This is a pattern. I've been pushed aside over and over again. First, it was the way he ignored me at family gatherings. Then it was the way he stopped calling, stopped asking for advice. And now this rejection. This coldness." Tom didn't respond, and for a moment the silence between us was deafening. "I need to know if you're with me on this," I continued. "Because right now, I feel like I'm fighting this battle alone. And I don't think I can do it anymore." Tom sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to say, Diane. I didn't realize it had gotten this bad." "That's the problem, Tom," I said, my voice softening. "You didn't realize. You've been so caught up in trying to keep the peace that you haven't seen what's really going on." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "Mark needs to understand that he can't treat people like this. And you need to stand up for me. For us. Because if you don't, we're just going to keep drifting further apart." Tom looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, finally, he nodded. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been avoiding this, but it's time we face it." I felt a small sense of relief wash over me. Maybe, just maybe, things could start to change. Maybe Tom would finally understand. Maybe, just maybe, we could start healing this broken family. But deep down, I knew that this was just the beginning. It wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't giving up. Not now, not ever. I woke up the next morning with a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in days. Tom and I had talked the night before, and though things weren't perfect, I felt like we were finally on the same page. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't carrying the burden alone. But as I went through my morning routine, I knew that this wasn't over. I still had to face Mark. I had no idea what he was thinking, or if he even realized the depth of the damage he'd caused. But I was done waiting. I wasn't going to sit around and let him dictate my worth any longer. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Kathy. "Diane," she said, her voice bright but with a hint of concern. "How are you holding up today?" "I'm okay," I replied, taking a deep breath. "I talked to Tom last night, and it felt good. But I still have to deal with Mark." Kathy paused. "I understand. But don't let him walk all over you, Diane. You're stronger than this." I smiled, grateful for Kathy's words. She always knew just what to say. "I know. I'm not going to back down this time. I just don't know what to say to him. I don't know how to make him understand." "You don't have to make him understand," Kathy said gently. Just make sure he knows where you stand. And if he's not willing to listen, then maybe it's time to stop trying. I nodded, even though Kathy couldn't see me. She was right. I had tried for years to be the perfect stepmother, to make sure Mark felt loved and supported. But it was clear now that I couldn't force him to accept me. The truth was, I had to stop chasing after his approval. If he couldn't see my worth, then that was on him, not me. As I hung up the phone, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I didn't have to prove myself to him. I didn't have to prove myself to anyone. That thought stayed with me as I made my way to the living room. Tom was already sitting on the couch, his eyes glued to the television. I'm going to talk to Mark today, I said, my voice steady. Tom turned to look at me, his expression soft. I'll be here when you get back, he said quietly. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. I nodded, feeling a little bit more sure of myself. I was going to do this. I didn't know how the conversation would go, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of losing him, of losing my place in the family. What mattered was that I was standing up for myself, finally. When I arrived at Mark's place later that afternoon, I could feel the tension in the air. He was standing by the door when I walked in, his arms crossed, looking defensive. I took a deep breath and met his eyes. We need to talk, I said, my voice calm but firm. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, he spoke. I don't know what you want from me, Diane. I didn't mean to hurt you. You did hurt me, I replied, my voice steady. And I need you to understand that. I've given so much of myself to this family. And I won't let you push me away just because it's easier for you. Mark looked down, his expression shifting. I never meant to make you feel like you didn't matter, he said quietly. I don't know how to deal with everything. I could see the vulnerability in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. You don't get to treat me like this, Mark, I said, my tone sharp now. I've been there for you. I've supported you. But I won't let you disrespect me anymore. He looked at me, his face softening. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for things to go this far. The apology was small, but it was enough for me to hear. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't everything I wanted. But it was a start. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had been heard. And maybe, just maybe, things could start to heal. I walked away from that conversation with Mark feeling a small sense of relief. It wasn't the resolution I had hoped for, but it was a step in the right direction. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, and I wasn't expecting everything to change overnight. But I also knew that things couldn't go back to the way they were before. There was a shift, a moment where both Mark and I saw things differently, even if just for a moment. But as I made my way back to the house, the reality of the situation started to set in. The road ahead wouldn't be smooth. It wouldn't be simple. I had hoped that Mark's apology would somehow make everything better, but I knew deep down that it was just the beginning of a long process. The feeling of being pushed aside, of being told I wasn't real family, was still fresh in my mind. It still hurt. And even though he apologized, there was something inside me that couldn't just let go of it. As I entered the house, Tom was sitting on the couch, watching the news. His eyes met mine, and I could see the concern on his face. How did it go? He asked softly, not wanting to push but wanting to know. I took a deep breath, walking over to sit next to him. It was a start, I said. He apologized, but it's not enough yet. Tom nodded, his hand reaching for mine. I'm proud of you, Diane, he said quietly. I know it's not easy, but you did the right thing. His words, though comforting, didn't erase the sting. I wasn't sure if I was proud of myself just yet. I had stood up for myself, yes, but there was still a part of me that longed for the family we used to be. The family where Mark and I had shared those quiet moments, where he came to me for advice or comfort. It felt like a distant memory now, a time before everything got complicated. I looked at Tom, wondering if he could sense that something was still off. Do you think things will ever go back to normal? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom sighed, his hand gently squeezing mine. I don't know, he said. But I think it's going to take time. It won't happen overnight, but I believe you can work things out with Mark. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that everything would be okay. But the truth was, I wasn't sure anymore. Could Mark ever truly see me for who I was, not just his stepmother, but someone who had loved him like her own? Could I ever let go of the hurt, of the feeling that I wasn't enough for him? These were questions I couldn't answer yet. But I knew that whatever happened, I wasn't going to back down. I had fought too hard for this family to just walk away. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be quick, but I was going to keep fighting. For myself. For Tom. And for whatever was left of the family I had worked so hard to build. The days that followed were a mixture of quiet hope and quiet frustration. I had done what I needed to do, but the distance between Mark and me still felt too wide. His apology had been genuine, but it wasn't enough to erase the sting of his words. I kept waiting for the moment when things would feel normal again, when we could laugh together, share stories, and rebuild the connection we once had. But it wasn't happening. Mark continued to avoid me, and every time I tried to start a conversation, he would change the subject or walk away. It felt like I was fighting a battle I didn't fully understand, one where I wasn't even sure if I could win. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, and though I had told myself I would keep fighting, a part of me started to wonder if it was all worth it. Was it worth fighting for someone who had rejected me so easily? Was it worth chasing after a family that seemed to be slipping away with every passing day? I wasn't sure anymore. That evening, after dinner, I went outside to sit on the porch. It had become a routine of mine, this quiet moment of reflection when everything else felt too overwhelming. The air was cool, the sky clear, and for a brief moment, I let myself breathe deeply and think. My thoughts kept circling back to Mark. How had it all gotten to this point? Where had I gone wrong? I thought about the years I had spent trying to build a relationship with him. I had worked so hard to make him feel loved, supported, and included. But in the end, it felt like none of it mattered. My mind wandered to Tom, and I couldn't help but wonder what he was feeling. He had always been the peacemaker, the one who kept things calm when the storm seemed too big. But now, even he seemed uncertain. He was worried about Mark, just as I was, but I could see the worry in his eyes too. I didn't know how much more of this I could take. The silence in the house was suffocating. Every time I looked at Mark, I saw a reminder of the distance between us, a distance that seemed impossible to bridge. And every time I looked at Tom, I saw the same uncertainty in his eyes that I felt in my heart. I didn't want to give up on Mark, but I also didn't want to keep fighting a battle that seemed pointless. I needed to make a decision. I needed to find a way to move forward, whether it was with Mark or without him. But for the first time, I wasn't sure what that path looked like. I thought back to Kathy's words. You've got people who care about you, people who know your worth. Don't forget that. Her voice echoed in my mind, and I realized that maybe I had been so focused on what I didn't have, that I forgot to appreciate what I still did. I still had Tom. I still had the people who cared about me. I still had the strength to keep going. And maybe that was enough for now. Maybe I didn't need to have all the answers today. Maybe, just maybe, I could find peace in the uncertainty and trust that, in time, things would get better. As I sat on the porch, the cool breeze on my face, I made a decision. I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to let this situation define me. I was going to keep going, one day at a time, and trust that I would find my way through it. The road ahead might be long, but I wasn't walking it alone. Days passed, and I found myself in a quiet space, trying to understand what I had learned from everything that had happened. Mark had apologized, but the hurt lingered, a shadow that refused to leave. I could feel it when I looked at him, when I tried to talk to him, even when he smiled. It wasn't the same anymore. It wasn't that I wanted things to stay the same. What I really wanted was a chance for us to rebuild, to truly understand each other, to move beyond the hurt. But Mark wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I could see that in his eyes, in the way he avoided me, in the silence that stretched between us. I couldn't change him, no matter how hard I tried, and I had to come to terms with that. The truth was, I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of waiting, tired of carrying the weight of the family's unspoken tension on my shoulders. I had given so much, and now I had to find a way to give to myself. It wasn't easy. For so long, my world had revolved around trying to hold everything together. I had poured my heart into a family that seemed to be slipping through my fingers. And now, as I looked at Mark, I realized something. Maybe it wasn't all on me. Maybe it wasn't just my responsibility to fix everything. Maybe the best thing I could do now was take a step back and let the pieces fall where they may. Tom could see the change in me. He could feel the shift, too. There were moments when he would look at me with concern, as if searching for something, some sign that I wasn't giving up on our family. But I wasn't giving up. I was just letting go. I didn't need to fix everything anymore. I needed to find peace in what was. I had spent so many years living for others, trying to make everyone happy, trying to make everything work, that I had forgotten to care for myself. I had forgotten to breathe, to enjoy the simple moments, to appreciate the love that was still there, even if it was different from what I expected. One evening, as I sat outside watching the sunset, I realized how much I had been holding on to, a past that no longer existed, a family that wasn't the same anymore. And in that quiet moment, something shifted inside me. It wasn't a grand epiphany or a sudden revelation, but it was enough. I understood that sometimes, letting go didn't mean giving up. It meant accepting what is and allowing yourself to move forward, even if it's uncertain. I didn't know what the future held with Mark, with Tom, with the family I had tried so hard to build. But I knew I couldn't keep waiting for things to change. I had to change. And that change started with me. The next day, I took a walk by myself, just to clear my head, to remind myself that I was still me. I was still Diane, and I was worthy of love and respect, regardless of the mistakes I had made or the hurt I had caused. I wasn't perfect, and neither was Mark. But we were both trying. In our own ways. And maybe that was enough. For now, it was enough. I spent the next few weeks in a quiet kind of peace. Things weren't perfect, and they weren't easy, but I had finally found a place where I could breathe. I stopped trying to fix everything. I stopped trying to prove myself. I started to focus on myself, and what I needed to heal, and in doing that, I found a sense of calm that had eluded me for so long. Mark and I hadn't talked much since our conversation, but there was a shift. It wasn't an immediate change, but I could feel the difference. He wasn't avoiding me as much. He wasn't cold, not as distant as he had been. I didn't expect everything to be fine overnight, and I knew it was going to take time. But there was something important. He wasn't rejecting me anymore. He was trying too. Maybe not in the way I imagined, but he was trying. One afternoon, he asked if I wanted to go for a walk with him. I hesitated at first, unsure if this was just another surface-level gesture, but then I realized it didn't matter. I wasn't expecting anything. I was just going to take it for what it was, a step forward. We walked in silence at first, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward, but comfortable, the kind you share with someone when you don't need to say anything to understand each other. Then Mark broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know how to handle everything. I guess I thought pushing you away would make things easier." I stopped walking, turning to face him. He didn't meet my eyes at first, but after a few seconds he did. And for the first time in a long time, I saw something, regret, yes, but also a desire to move forward. "It's okay," I said, though I didn't know if it was. "It's not easy, Mark. It's not just about the words you said. It's about how I've felt for so long, like I don't belong. Like I'm always just trying to fit into a place that doesn't want me." Mark nodded, his gaze dropping. "I never meant to make you feel that way. You've always been there for me. I just I didn't know how to see that. I stood there for a moment, considering his words. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't expecting me to just let everything go. But he was acknowledging the hurt, and that meant something. We both have a lot to figure out, I said finally. But I'm willing to try if you are. Mark gave a small smile, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. Not everything was fixed, not by a long shot. But it was a start. We walked a little further, and I could feel a weight lifting from my chest. Maybe we didn't have all the answers. Maybe we would never have everything figured out. But for now, that moment felt enough. It felt like a beginning. I didn't know where the future would take us, but for the first time in a long time, I was willing to walk through it, no matter how uncertain it seemed. I wasn't alone anymore. And neither was Mark.